Hello there and welcome to Sleepy Science Guide. I'm so glad you found your way here. Maybe it's been a long day, or maybe you're the kind of person who likes to drift off thinking about the distant past, the civilizations that came before, the mysteries they left behind, carved in stone and buried in sand. Either way, tonight's journey is for you. You don't need to do anything now, but rest. Let your breathing slow, your thoughts soften, and your mind wander back through time, back to the moments when humans first looked up at the stars and wondered, when they carved symbols into rock and built temples to things they couldn't quite name. Because tonight, we're going to explore the ancient mysteries, not to solve them, but to drift alongside them, to feel the weight of the questions that have lingered for thousands of years, still unanswered, still beckoning us towards something we can't quite see. Before we begin, if these quiet explorations help you unwind or give you a peaceful way to end your day, consider gently tapping the like button and subscribing to the channel. It helps others find their way here too. One sleepy soul at a time. And if you feel like it, leave a comment telling me which country you're listening from tonight. I'd love to know where in the world you are as you drift into sleep. Now, let's begin. There is something about mysteries that calms the mind. It seems like it should be the opposite. Mysteries are unresolved. They're questions without answers, puzzles that resist solution. And yet, when you think about an ancient mystery, when you let your mind drift toward the pyramids rising from desert sand, or the stone circles standing silent under changing skies, there's a strange kind of peace that settles in. Not the peace of knowing, but the peace of wondering, of accepting that some things remain beyond our grasp, that some questions were never meant to be fully answered. Humans are drawn to mysteries. We always have been. From the moment we gained the ability to ask why, we've been asking it. Why does the sun rise? Why do seasons change? Why do we dream? And when we couldn't find answers, we didn't stop asking. We built monuments to our questions. We carved them into stone. We passed them down through generations, each one adding their own layer of wonder, their own interpretation, their own quiet attempt to understand what came before. But here's something interesting. When we engage with mysteries, especially ancient ones, something happens in the mind. The usual pathways of problem solving, the ones that demand resolution, begin to quiet down. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that plans and analyzes and insists on answers, softens its grip. And in that softening, there's a kind of release. The mind doesn't have to solve anything. It can simply drift. It can wonder without urgency. It can rest in the not knowing. This is why mysteries are so well suited for sleep. They invite you into a space where there's no pressure to understand, no test at the end, no right or wrong answer. There's only the slow unfolding of images, the gentle flow of ideas, the quiet sense that something vast and old exists just beyond the edge of comprehension. And that's a peaceful place to be, a place where the mind can let go, where thoughts can become soft and shapeless, where sleep can arrive like a tide coming in, gradual and inevitable. There's also something about the night that connects us to these mysteries. Most of the ancient world experienced darkness in a way we no longer do. Without electric lights, the night was profound. It was complete. And in that darkness, the stars were brighter, the moon more present, the sense of the unknown more immediate. Ancient people built their monuments not just to be seen in daylight, but to exist in relationship with the night. Stonehenge aligns with solstices. The pyramids align with constellations. Temples were oriented towards celestial events that only revealed themselves in darkness. So as you lie here now, in your own darkness, you're participating in something very old. You're letting the night hold you, just as it held the people who built these monuments, who carved these symbols, who stood beneath the same stars and asked the same questions. And in that shared wondering, across thousands of years, there's a kind of companionship. You're not alone in the mystery. You're part of a long lineage of people who looked at the world and felt awe. Let that thought settle gently. There's no need to hold on to it. Just let it drift through your mind like a cloud passing over the moon. The pyramids of Giza rise from the desert like mountains that shouldn't exist. They're so large, so precise, so impossibly placed that even now, standing before them, the mind struggles to reconcile what the eyes are seeing. These aren't natural formations. They were built, stone by stone, block by block, each one weighing tons, cut and transported and lifted into place with a level of accuracy that challenges even modern engineering. But the question isn't really how they were built. The question is why they still feel like they're holding something back. Why, even after centuries of study, even after we've measured every angle and mapped every passage, they still retain an air of secrecy. It's not that we don't know things about the pyramids. We know a great deal. We know they were tombs. We know they were built for pharaohs. We know the approximate methods of construction, the ramps and levers, and sheer human labor involved. And yet, standing there at night, when the tourists have gone and the desert wind moves across the sand, and the stones catch the last light of the setting sun, they feel like messages, like symbols of something that can't quite be translated into words. Maybe it's the scale? The pyramids are so large that they dwarf the human form. Standing at the base, looking up, you feel the weight of your own smallness. And in that smallness, there's a kind of surrender. You're not meant to conquer this place. You're meant to feel its presence, to let it remind you that you are brief and these stones are old. Or maybe it's the silence. The desert is quiet in a way that modern life rarely is. There's no hum of electricity, no distant traffic, no ambient noise, just wind, just sand, just the sound of your own breathing. And in that silence, the pyramids seem to breathe too. Not literally, of course, but there's a presence to them, a weight, a sense that they've been watching the passage of time for so long that they've become part of it, markers not just of history, but of something deeper, something about human ambition, human mortality, human longing to be remembered. The ancient Egyptians believed that the pyramids were not just tombs, but gateways, places where the pharaoh's soul could ascend to join the stars, to become part of the eternal sky. The shafts inside the Great Pyramid point towards specific constellations, Orion, Sirius, stars that held meaning in Egyptian cosmology. The pyramid wasn't just a burial place. It was a machine for transcendence, a structure designed to bridge the gap between earth and sky, between life and whatever came after. And maybe that's why they still feel mysterious, because they were built with a mindset we no longer fully share. We build for function. They built for meaning. We built to last a lifetime. They built to last forever. We think in terms of efficiency and practicality. They thought in terms of eternity and the soul. And so the pyramids stand as monuments not just to what they believed, but to a way of thinking about the world. that is largely faded, a worldview where the boundary between the physical and the spiritual was porous, where stones could hold power, where alignment with the stars mattered deeply. Imagine standing there now. It's night. The moon is full, casting silver light across the sand. The pyramids loom above you, their edges sharp against the sky. The wind is cool. The desert stretches endlessly in every direction. And you're alone, or nearly alone. Just you and these vast stone structures that have stood for over 4,000 years. What would you feel? Awe, certainly. Maybe a little fear, but also, perhaps, a strange kind of peace, because in the presence of something so much larger and older than yourself, the small worries of daily life begin to seem less important. The mind quiets, the heart slows, and for a moment, you're just a human standing in the desert, looking at something your ancestors built, feeling the same wonder they must have felt when they first saw these stones rising into place. Let that image rest in your mind. The pyramids, the moon, the silence. No need to analyze it. Just let it be there. Soft and distant, like a memory of something you've never actually experienced. Long before the pyramids, before the great civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia, before writing or cities or agriculture, there was a place in what is now southeastern Turkey where people gathered. They came from miles around, carrying tools and food and whatever else they needed to survive. And together, over generations, they built something that still puzzles us today. They built Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe is a temple, or rather, it's a series of temples, massive stone circles arranged on a hilltop, each one carefully constructed with pillars carved from limestone, some weighing over 10 tons. These pillars are decorated with animals, foxes, snakes, scorpions, vultures, all carved with surprising skill and care. The site is enormous, complex and ancient. Current estimates date it to around 9,600 BCE, which makes it over 11,000 years old. That's older than Stonehenge by over 6,000 years, older than the pyramids by more than 6,000 years, older than the invention of agriculture. And that's the part that doesn't quite make sense. At least, not in the way we usually tell the story of human civilization. The standard narrative goes like this. Humans were hunter-gatherers for most of their history, moving from place to place, following herds and seasons. Then, around 10,000 years ago, they discovered agriculture. They learned to plant seeds, domesticate animals, settle in one place. And once they settled, they had time. Time to build, time to think, time to create art and religion and culture. First came farming, then came civilization, then came temples. But Göbekli Tepe suggests the order might have been different. The people who built this temple were still hunter-gatherers. They didn't have farms. They didn't live in permanent settlements. They hadn't yet made that leap into agriculture. And yet, they built a temple, a massive, elaborate, carefully planned temple that would have required coordination, labor, and a shared sense of purpose. They built it not because they had excess resources, but perhaps because they needed to, because belief came first, because the need to gather to mark sacred space, to create something larger than themselves, was so strong that it drove them to build even before they had the tools of settled life. This flips the usual story on its head. It suggests that religion, or at least the impulse toward the sacred, didn't emerge as a byproduct of civilization. It might have been one of the driving forces behind civilization, Humans didn't settle down and then start building temples. They might have built temples. And then, because those temples required regular visits, coordination, and eventually permanent caretakers, they began to settle down. We don't know for certain. Göbekli Tepe doesn't come with an instruction manual. The people who built it left no written records, no explanations, just the stones themselves, standing in circles, carved with animals and symbols whose meanings we can only guess at. Some archaeologists think the site was used for rituals, gatherings of clans who came together periodically to feast, to trade, to worship. Others suggest it might have been an astronomical observatory, a place to track the movements of the stars and mark the passage of seasons. Still others wonder if it served a function we can't even imagine, something tied to beliefs and practices that have been lost to time. What we do know is that after centuries, maybe even millennia of use, the site was deliberately buried, not destroyed, not abandoned, but carefully filled in with earth and stones, covered over, hidden. Why? No one knows. Maybe it had served its purpose. Maybe the beliefs that inspired its construction had changed. Maybe burying it was itself a ritual, a way of sealing something sacred, of preserving it by hiding it from the world. And so Göbekli Tepe lay beneath the earth for over 10,000 years, forgotten until it was rediscovered in the 1990s. And now we stand before it again, asking the same questions the original builders must have asked. What does it mean to be human? What do we owe to the invisible forces we sense around us? Why do we feel compelled to create, to build, to mark our presence on the landscape in ways that outlast our own brief lives? These aren't questions that need answers tonight. They're just thoughts to drift with, gentle currents in the stream of consciousness as sleep begins to pull you under. Stonehenge stands on Salisbury Plain in England, a circle of massive stones arranged with such precision that even now, even after thousands of years of weathering and collapse and human interference, the alignment still holds. The stones mark the summer solstice. On that one day each year, the sun rises directly over the heel stone and shines straight through the center of the circle, illuminating the space in a way that feels intentional, deliberate, sacred. But Stonehenge wasn't built in a day or even a generation. It was constructed over a period of roughly 1,500 years, from around 3000 BCE to 1500 BCE, with different phases involving different types of stones and different levels of architectural sophistication. The earliest phase was a simple circular ditch and bank. Later phases added the massive sarsen stones, each weighing around 25 tons, transported from quarries over 20 miles away. Still later, the smaller blue stones were added, brought from Wales over 150 miles away. The effort involved is staggering. Moving stones of that size without modern machinery requires not just labor, but coordination, planning, engineering knowledge, and above all, a reason. A reason strong enough to sustain the effort across generations. We don't know what that reason was, at least not fully. The solstice alignment suggests that Stonehenge was used to mark time, to track the movements of the sun and moon, to understand the rhythms of the year. Many ancient cultures built monuments aligned with celestial events. It makes sense. The sun governs the seasons. The moon governs the tides. Understanding these patterns meant understanding when to plant, when to harvest, when to prepare for winter. Timekeeping was survival, but Stonehenge feels like more than a calendar. It feels like a temple, a place where people gathered not just to observe the solstice, but to participate in it, to mark the turning of the year with ritual and ceremony. Archaeological evidence suggests that people came to Stonehenge from all over Britain, bringing animals for feasting, gathering in large numbers during key times of the year. It was a communal space, a meeting place, a site where the boundary between the everyday and the sacred grew thin. There's something deeply moving about this. The idea that thousands of years ago, people gathered in this circle of stones to watch the sun rise, to feel its warmth after the long darkness of winter, to celebrate the return of light. They didn't have the science we have. They didn't understand that the Earth tilts on its axis, that the solstice is a predictable astronomical event caused by orbital mechanics. To them, the sun's return might have felt less certain, more miraculous. Each winter, the days grew shorter, the sun weakened, the cold deepened, and each year there must have been a quiet, primal fear that maybe this time the sun wouldn't come back. Maybe the darkness would win. But it always did come back. And at Stonehenge, they could see it happen. They could stand in that circle and watch the light pour through the stones and know that the world was renewing itself, that life would continue, that the cycle would hold. And in that moment, there must have been relief, gratitude, awe, a feeling that the universe, vast and incomprehensible as it was, still followed patterns they could mark and honor and align themselves with. Stonehenge also reminds us that ancient people were not primitive in their understanding of the sky. They watched it closely. They tracked the movements of celestial bodies with precision. They understood cycles that repeated over years, over decades, even over generations. They passed this knowledge down, refined it, built structures that encoded it in stone so that even if the people who built them were forgotten, the knowledge would remain, waiting to be read by anyone who knew how to look. And yet, despite all we've learned about Stonehenge, despite the measurements and excavations and theories, it still holds something back. It still feels like it's keeping a secret. Maybe it's because we're looking at it from the outside, as observers, as analysts, as people trying to decode a message that was never really meant for us. The people who built Stonehenge didn't build it for future archaeologists. They built it for themselves, for their gods, for the sun and the moon, and the turning of the seasons. And so the true meaning, the lived experience of standing in that circle on a solstice morning, surrounded by your community, watching the light break through the stones, that's something we can only imagine, but you can imagine it now. As you lie here in the dark, you can let your mind drift back to that moment, to the feeling of standing in a circle of stones, the air cold and clear, the sky beginning to brighten, the first rays of sunlight touching the heelstone and streaming toward you. You can feel the weight of the year behind you, the relief of knowing that light is returning, that spring will come, that life will continue. And in that imagined moment, you're connected across time to the people who stood there first, who felt what you're feeling, who looked up at the same sky and wondered the same things. Just let that image rest in your mind. Stonehenge, the stones, the sun, the quiet knowing that some patterns hold, that some cycles continue, that even in darkness, light will return. In the ancient world, there was a place where knowledge gathered. Not just any knowledge, but all knowledge. Every scroll, every manuscript, every philosophical treatise, every mathematical proof, every poem, every history, every medical text, every work of astronomy and geography and theology that could be collected was brought to one place, the Library of Alexandria. It stood in the city of Alexandria in Egypt, a vast complex of buildings housing perhaps hundreds of thousands of scrolls, tended by scholars and scribes who devoted their lives to the preservation and pursuit of knowledge. The library was more than a repository. It was a living institution. Scholars came from across the known world to study there, to learn, to debate, to copy texts and carry that knowledge back to their own cities. It was a place where ideas met and mingled, where Greek philosophy encountered Egyptian wisdom, where mathematicians and poets and physicians could all work side by side, each contributing to the great project of understanding the world. It was, in many ways, the intellectual heart of the ancient Mediterranean. And then it was gone. Not all at once, but gradually, over centuries, through a combination of fire, war, political upheaval, and neglect. The exact details are unclear. Some sources say Julius Caesar accidentally set fire to the library during a military conflict in 48 BCE. Others suggest it was damaged but not destroyed then, and that it continued to function for centuries afterward, only to be finally dismantled and dispersed under later rulers. Some blame religious zealotry, others blame simple decay. The truth is probably a combination of all these factors, a slow erosion rather than a single catastrophic event. But the result is the same. The library is gone, and with it, an incalculable amount of knowledge. We don't know exactly what was lost because we don't have records of everything the library contained. We can only guess, based on references in surviving texts, based on the gaps in our knowledge of ancient science and literature. How many plays by lost Greek dramatists? How many works of philosophy that might have challenged or expanded the ideas we inherited? How many mathematical proofs, astronomical observations, maps of the ancient world? How many voices, how many minds, how many perspectives that might have enriched our understanding of what humans once knew? The loss of the Library of Alexandria is often held up as one of the great tragedies of history, and it is. But it's also a reminder of something deeper. Knowledge is fragile. It doesn't preserve itself. It requires care, copying, transmission from one generation to the next. And when that chain breaks, when the circumstances that support the preservation of knowledge collapse, vast amounts can simply disappear, not because anyone intended to destroy it, but because no one was left to protect it. This happens more often than we like to think. Throughout history, libraries have burned, texts have been lost, languages have gone extinct, taking with them entire literatures that we'll never read. The story of human knowledge is not a straight line of accumulation. It's a story of surges and collapses, of brilliant moments followed by dark ages, of knowledge gained and then forgotten, and then, sometimes, painfully reconstructed. But there's something about the Library of Alexandria that captures the imagination in a particular way. Maybe it's the scale, maybe it's the symbolism. A library is a place of light, of learning, of the human mind reaching toward understanding. And its destruction, its loss, feels like a dimming of that light. It reminds us that what we know is only a fraction of what was once known, that behind us lies a vast landscape of forgotten wisdom, lost voices, unanswered questions that were once asked and perhaps even answered, but whose answers didn't survive the passage of time. And yet, there's also something strangely peaceful about this thought. Not the loss itself, but the acceptance of it. The understanding that we will never know everything. That some things are gone and will remain gone. That the past is not fully recoverable. And in that understanding, there's a letting go. A release from the pressure to know, to solve, to recover some mysteries will remain mysteries. Some knowledge is lost forever, and that's sad, yes, but it's also part of the human story. We are brief. Our works are fragile. Even the things we build to last don't always last. And in that impermanence, there's a kind of beauty. So as you lie here now, thinking about the Library of Alexandria, about the scrolls that burned and the knowledge that vanished, let it remind you of something simple. This moment, this night, this quiet darkness you're resting in, it's impermanent too. It won't last. Morning will come. You'll wake. The day will begin again. But right now, in this moment, you can let go. You can stop trying to hold on to things. You can let the past be past. Let the lost stay lost. And simply rest in the present, in the not knowing, in the gentle darkness that asks nothing of you but to be still. On a remote island in the Pacific Ocean, over 2,000 miles from the nearest continent, stand nearly 900 massive stone figures. They're called moai, and they dot the landscape of Easter Island, also known as Rapa Nui, like sentries, like watchers, like silent witnesses to something we can no longer see. Most of them face inland, their backs to the sea, their enormous heads and elongated features carved from volcanic rock. Some are still standing on their platforms, called ahu. Others have fallen, toppled by time or earthquakes or human conflict. And still others remain in the quarry, half-carved, abandoned mid-creation, as if the work simply stopped one day and never resumed. The moai are enormous. The average height is around 13 feet, but some are much larger. The tallest moai ever erected stands over 30 feet high and weighs around 82 tons. They were carved using stone tools, shaped and smoothed, and transported from the quarry to locations all around the island, sometimes miles away. How this was accomplished is still debated. Some researchers think they were moved on wooden sledges pulled by ropes. Others suggest they were walked upright, rocked back and forth in a controlled manner that allowed them to move forward without being dragged. Either way, it would have required enormous effort, coordination, and resources. But the question isn't just how they were moved, it's why. Why did the people of Rapa Nui devote so much energy, so much of their limited resources, to carving and erecting these stone figures? The island is small, isolated, with limited natural resources. Trees were scarce, food was not always abundant, and yet, for centuries, they kept carving moai, kept raising them onto platforms, kept pouring their labor into these stone giants that couldn't be eaten, couldn't be lived in, couldn't directly improve anyone's survival. The most common theory is that the moai represented ancestors, that they were a way of honoring the dead, of keeping the memory and mana, spiritual power, of important chiefs and leaders alive and present in the community. Raising a moai was a way of saying, this person mattered. Their spirit still watches over us. They are part of the island, part of the land, part of the continuity between past and present. And so, the moai faced inland, looking over the villages and fields, protecting and observing. There's something deeply human about this impulse. The desire to remember, to honor, to create something that lasts longer than a single human life. We do this in many ways, through monuments and statues, through names carved in stone, through stories passed down through generations. But the moai take it to an extreme. They are so large, so permanent, so imposing, that they dominate the landscape. You cannot stand on Rapa Nui without seeing them, without feeling their presence. They remind you that this island has a history, that people lived here long before you, that they looked out at the same ocean, walked the same volcanic soil, and felt the same wind. And yet, despite their permanence, the Moai also carry a sense of loss, because the society that created them no longer exists, at least not in the same form. By the time European explorers arrived in the 18th century, the island's population had collapsed. The great Moai building era was over. Many of the statues had been toppled, possibly during internal conflicts. The forests had been cleared. The resources that once sustained the island had been depleted. The people who remained told stories of the Moai, of the ancestors, but much of the specific knowledge of how and why they were built had been lost. Some see this as a cautionary tale, a story of ecological collapse brought on by overexploitation of resources. Others argue that the reality was more complex, involving not just environmental factors, but also contact with outsiders, disease, and social upheaval. Either way, the Moai stand as a reminder that even the most monumental efforts, even the most carefully carved stones, cannot guarantee a society's survival. They endure, but the people who made them don't always endure with them. And so the Moai watch, silent, weathered, still imposing after centuries of wind and rain. They face inland, their backs to the vast ocean, and they hold within them all the questions we can no longer answer. What did it feel like to stand at the base of a newly erected Moai and look up at the face of an ancestor? What songs were sung during the carving? What prayers were offered when the stone was finally set in place? What did it mean to the people who built them, not as a historical curiosity, but as a lived, felt, urgent act of devotion? We don't know. We can only stand there, as visitors, as outsiders, and feel the weight of what was left behind. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the not knowing is part of what makes the Moai powerful. They don't explain themselves. They simply are. Massive, inscrutable, ancient, and in their silence, they invite us to wonder, to imagine, to feel the presence of something larger than ourselves, something that connects us to the long chain of humans who have looked at the world and asked, how do we make meaning? How do we leave a mark that lasts? Let that question rest in your mind, soft and unanswered, as you drift deeper into sleep. In 1901, divers exploring a shipwreck off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera found something unexpected. Among the pottery and statues and other artifacts recovered from the ancient Roman vessel was a corroded lump of bronze and wood. At first, it didn't seem like much, but as researchers began to clean and study it, they realized what they were looking at. It was a machine, a complex mechanism of interlocking gears, dials, and inscriptions, and it was over 2,000 years old. The Antikythera mechanism, as it came to be known, is the most sophisticated ancient artifact of its kind ever discovered. It's sometimes called the world's first analog computer. And for good reason. The device was designed to calculate and display the positions of celestial bodies, to predict eclipses, to track the cycles of the moon and the sun, and to model the irregular motion of the planets across the sky. It had at least 30 bronze gears, possibly more, arranged in a way that allowed it to perform calculations of astonishing complexity. Some of the gears had teeth cut at irregular intervals to account for the elliptical orbit of the moon, an astronomical phenomenon that wouldn't be fully understood until centuries later. To put this in perspective, no other artifact from antiquity comes close to this level of mechanical sophistication. The next comparable device, in terms of complexity and function, doesn't appear in the historical record until medieval Islamic astronomers and later European clockmakers began creating similar instruments over 1,000 years later. The Antikythera mechanism stands alone, a singular example of ancient engineering that seems almost out of place, like someone left a piece of the future in the past. And that's the mystery. Not how it worked. We figured that out more or less through decades of painstaking reconstruction and X-ray imaging. The mystery is why. Why was this level of sophistication achieved and then, apparently, lost? Why don't we see other devices like it? Was this a unique creation? A one-of-a-kind masterpiece built by a single brilliant engineer? Or was it one example of a broader tradition of mechanical engineering that simply didn't survive? Did other ancient civilizations have similar technologies that we haven't discovered yet, or that were lost to time? We don't know. The historical record is silent. There are ancient texts that mention devices for modeling the heavens, but nothing that clearly describes something as complex as the Antikythera mechanism. It's possible that such devices existed, but were rare, expensive, and accessible only to the wealthy and educated. It's possible that the knowledge required to build them was passed down through small guilds of craftsmen and eventually died out when those guilds dissolved, or when broader social conditions changed. Or maybe, just maybe, the ancients were capable of far more than we give them credit for, and we've only scratched the surface of what they achieved. There's something humbling about this. We tend to think of technological progress as linear, as a steady march from primitive to advanced, from simple to complex. But the Antikythera mechanism suggests otherwise. It suggests that history is not a straight line, but a series of peaks and valleys, of moments of brilliance followed by long periods of forgetting. Technologies are invented and then lost. Knowledge is accumulated and then scattered. And sometimes, a single artifact survives to remind us that the people of the past were not less intelligent, not less capable, but simply lived in different circumstances, with different priorities, different challenges, different ways of understanding the world. The Antikythera mechanism also reminds us that the ancient world was deeply interested in the sky. Astronomy was not just a science, but a practice tied to religion, agriculture, navigation, and timekeeping. Understanding the movements of the sun, moon, and planets was essential. And so people invested enormous effort into observing, recording, and modeling these movements. They built observatories. They created calendars. They passed down knowledge through generations. And in some cases, they built machines like the Antikythera mechanism, devices that could compress centuries of observation and calculation into a single elegant mechanism of bronze gears. Imagine holding that device in your hands. Imagine turning the crank and watching the dials move, watching the representations of the sun and moon and planets shift into their proper positions, watching the device predict an eclipse months or even years in advance. Imagine the feeling of understanding, of seeing the order hidden within the apparent chaos of the heavens, of knowing that the universe follows patterns, that those patterns can be known, that humans are capable of decoding them. That feeling, that sense of wonder and mastery and connection to the cosmos, that's what the Antikythera mechanism represents. Not just the technical skill required to build it, but the intellectual ambition behind it, the desire to know, to understand, to hold a model of the heavens in your hands and feel, even for a moment, that the vast machinery of the universe is comprehensible, that it's not random, that it makes sense. And then, just as quickly, that feeling fades, Because the mechanism is broken now, corroded, incomplete, pulled from the sea after 2,000 years, its context lost, its makers unknown, its full purpose still a matter of debate. It's a fragment, a glimpse, a whisper of something that once was and then wasn't. And in that incompleteness, in that brokenness, it becomes even more powerful because it reminds us that knowledge is fragile, that even the most sophisticated creations can be lost, that the past is not a museum we can walk through, but a ruin we're still trying to piece together. Let that image settle. The gears, the bronze, the sea, the slow passage of time that takes everything and leaves only fragments. There's a kind of peace in accepting that, in knowing that some things are broken and will stay broken, that some knowledge is lost and will stay lost. And that's okay. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to solve it. You can just rest in the presence of the mystery, in the quiet acknowledgement that the past holds secrets we'll never fully recover. If you look at ancient art from cultures all over the world, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, you'll notice something strange. The same symbols appear again and again. Spirals, circles, snakes, eyes, hands, the sun, the moon, stars. These images show up in cave paintings, on pottery, carved into stone, woven into textiles, painted on temple walls. They cross boundaries of language and culture and time. And yet, for many of them, we don't have a clear, universal explanation for what they mean. Take the spiral, for example. It's one of the most common symbols in ancient art. You'll find it carved into megaliths at Newgrange in Ireland, painted on pottery in the American Southwest, etched into rocks in Australia, present in ancient Mesopotamian seals. Spirals appear in nature, in shells and whirlpools and the patterns of growth in plants. But that doesn't fully explain why ancient people, who didn't have contact with each other, all independently chose to use the spiral as a symbol. What did it represent? Movement? Cycles? The passage of time? The journey of the soul? Different cultures may have had different answers, or maybe they all sensed something similar, something about the spiral that resonated with some deep, shared aspect of human consciousness. The same is true for snakes. Snake imagery appears in cultures across the globe, often associated with transformation, renewal, or danger. Snakes shed their skin, appearing to be reborn. They move in ways that seem almost supernatural, flowing across the ground without legs. They can be deadly, but they can also be symbols of healing, as in the caduceus, the staff of Asclepius, the ancient Greek symbol of medicine. In some cultures, snakes are guardians. In others, they're tricksters. In still others, they're gods or ancestors or spirits. The meanings vary, but the presence of the snake as a significant symbol is nearly universal. Eyes, too. The eye symbol appears in ancient Egypt as the Eye of Horus, a protective symbol. It appears in ancient Greece as the eye of the gods, always watching. It shows up in Buddhist art, in Mesoamerican carvings, in Neolithic European sites. The eye represents awareness, vision, knowledge, surveillance, protection. It's a symbol that says, you are seen, or perhaps, I see. And across cultures, that act of seeing, of being aware, carries enormous symbolic weight. Why do these symbols recur? One possibility is that they're rooted in the structure of human perception and cognition, the way our brains process visual information, the patterns we naturally find meaningful. might predispose us to recognize and value certain shapes and forms. Spirals and circles are mathematically simple, but visually rich. They appear in nature frequently enough that they become familiar, and familiarity breeds symbolic resonance. Another possibility is that these symbols tap into something deeper, something that psychologist Carl Jung called archetypes. Jung proposed that certain symbols and motifs are part of the collective unconscious, a shared layer of the human psyche that transcends individual experience. According to this view, symbols like the spiral, the snake, the eye aren't learned through culture, but emerge spontaneously because they reflect fundamental aspects of the human condition: birth, death, transformation, the cycles of nature, the mystery of existence. We don't have to accept Jung's theory wholesale to recognize that there's something interesting going on. Even if we set aside the idea of a collective unconscious, the fact remains that humans, across vast distances and long stretches of time, have repeatedly turned to the same images to express ideas that matter to them, and those images often remain ambiguous. They don't have a single fixed meaning. A spiral can mean many things depending on context. A snake can be good or evil or both. An eye can protect or threaten. The symbols are rich, layered, open to interpretation. And that openness is part of their power. Because symbols that are too specific, too tied to a particular cultural context, lose their resonance once that context fades. But symbols that are broad, that touch on something universal, endure. They can be picked up by new cultures, reinterpreted, given new layers of meaning, without losing their fundamental connection to the things that humans care about: life, death, change, mystery, the sense that the world is full of forces we can't always see, but can sometimes sense. So as you lie here now, thinking about spirals and snakes and eyes, let them drift through your mind without trying to pin them down, without trying to define them too precisely. Let them be what they are, images that have moved through human consciousness for thousands of years, carrying meanings that shift and change, but never quite disappear. And in that shifting, in that ambiguity, there's a kind of comfort, because it means you're not required to understand everything. You're not required to decode every symbol, to solve every mystery. You can simply let them exist. Let them be part of the vast, shared inheritance of human imagination, and rest in the knowledge that some things are meant to be felt more than understood. In the desert of southern Peru, etched into the dry, rocky ground, are a series of lines and shapes so large that they can only be fully appreciated from the air. These are the Nazca lines, a collection of geoglyphs created by the Nazca culture between 500 BCE and 500 CE. They depict animals, plants, geometric shapes, and abstract designs, all drawn on a massive scale. Some of the lines stretch for miles. Some of the figures, like the spider, the monkey, the hummingbird, are hundreds of feet across. They were made by removing the reddish surface stones to reveal the lighter ground beneath. A simple technique, but one that required immense planning and precision. The Nazca lines are mysterious not because we don't know how they were made. We do, but because we don't know why. Why would a culture create images that they themselves could never see in their entirety? The Nazca people didn't have aircraft. They didn't have hot air balloons. From ground level, the lines are just lines. You can't see the shapes. You can't see the overall design. Only from high above do the images resolve into recognizable forms. So, who were the lines for? One theory is that they were meant for the gods, that by creating these enormous images on the earth, the Nazca people were communicating with celestial beings, offering prayers or messages that could be seen from the sky. The lines might have been part of religious rituals, pathways to walk during ceremonies, ways of aligning human activity with cosmic forces. Some researchers point out that many of the lines align with the positions of the sun and stars at certain times of the year, suggesting an astronomical function, a way of marking solstices or tracking celestial cycles. Another theory suggests that the lines were related to water. The Nazca region is one of the driest places on Earth. Water was scarce, precious, essential for survival. Some of the lines seem to point towards sources of water or follow underground aquifers. Perhaps the geoglyphs were part of rituals intended to bring rain, to honor water spirits, to ensure that the life-giving resource would continue to flow. Still, another possibility is that the lines served a social function. Creating them would have required coordination and labor from many people. The act of making the lines, of gathering to clear the stones and shape the figures, might have been as important as the lines themselves. It could have been a way of building community, of reinforcing shared identity, of demonstrating collective power and organization. The lines become less about the final product and more about the process, about what it meant to work together toward a common goal. Or maybe the lines had no single purpose. Maybe they meant different things at different times to different people. Maybe they started as one thing and became another as the culture evolved, as beliefs changed, as new generations reinterpreted the work of their ancestors. This is the challenge with ancient monuments. We want them to have clear answers, definitive explanations. But the truth is often more complex, layered, ambiguous. What we do know is that the Nazca lines have endured. They've survived for over 1,000 years in one of the harshest environments on Earth, preserved by the extreme dryness and the stable climate of the Peruvian desert. They're fragile, vulnerable to foot traffic and vehicle tracks, which is why the area is now protected. But they're still there, still visible, still mysterious. And standing at the edge of the desert, looking out at the vast expanse of lines and shapes etched into the earth, there's a feeling that's hard to put into words. A sense of presence, a sense that something significant happened here, that the people who created these lines were reaching towards something, even if we can't quite grasp what that something was. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the Nazca lines are less about delivering a specific message and more about embodying a question. What does it mean to leave a mark on the world? What does it mean to create something that will outlast you, that will endure long after you and everyone you know is gone? The Nazca people didn't know that we, 21st century humans, would be flying over their desert in airplanes, looking down at their work, marveling at their precision and scale. They created the lines for their own reasons, within their own context. But the fact that those lines are still here, still visible, still capable of inspiring awe and wonder, speaks to something deeper. The human need to create, to mark, to say, we were here, we mattered, we saw the world and responded to it in ways that meant something to us, even if you, centuries or millennia later, can't fully understand why. That need doesn't require a logical explanation. It just is. And as you drift deeper into sleep, you can let that thought rest in your mind, soft and unchallenged, like a line drawn in the sand, present but not demanding, there but not insisting on being understood. The Sphinx sits at the edge of the Giza Plateau in Egypt, carved from a single massive block of limestone. It has the body of a lion and the head of a human, most likely representing a pharaoh, though which one is still debated. It faces east, toward the rising sun and it's enormous, over 200 feet long and 60 feet high. Even after thousands of years of erosion, even with its nose missing and its surface weathered by wind and sand, it still commands a sense of awe. There's something about the Sphinx that feels older than old, like it's been there forever, like it's watching something we can't see. And maybe it has. One of the lingering mysteries about the Sphinx is its age. Conventional Egyptology dates it to around 2500 BCE, built during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, whose pyramid stands nearby. But some researchers have questioned this dating, pointing to patterns of erosion on the Sphinx that suggest prolonged exposure to water, not wind. In other words, the Sphinx might have been carved when the climate in Egypt was much wetter than it is now. And the last time that region experienced significant rainfall was thousands of years before the conventional date, possibly as far back as 10,000 BCE or earlier. This theory is controversial. Most mainstream Egyptologists reject it, arguing that the erosion can be explained by other factors and that there's no evidence of a civilization in Egypt capable of creating the Sphinx at such an early date. But the debate lingers, fueled by the fact that the Sphinx doesn't quite fit. It doesn't have inscriptions clearly linking it to Khafre. It doesn't match the style of other Old Kingdom monuments. It just sits there, silent, weathered, enigmatic, as if it predates the civilization that later built the pyramids around it. Even if we accept the conventional dating, the Sphinx still feels like it's guarding something. Its posture is that of a protector, lying prone but alert, watching the horizon. In ancient Egyptian mythology, sphinxes were often guardians, protectors of sacred spaces, beings that tested the worthiness of those who approached. The most famous myth involving a sphinx comes from Greece, not Egypt, the story of Oedipus and the riddle. But the concept is similar. The Sphinx stands between the ordinary world and something beyond, something sacred or dangerous or transformative. And to pass, you must prove yourself, usually through knowledge or insight. What is the Sphinx guarding? Maybe nothing. Maybe it's just a monument, a symbol of royal power, a massive sculpture intended to impress and intimidate. But there's a persistent feeling, maybe fueled by centuries of legend and speculation, that the Sphinx knows something, that beneath it or nearby or encoded in its very form, there's a secret, a hidden chamber, a lost hall of records, some piece of knowledge from a forgotten age. No such discovery has been made. Extensive surveys and excavations around the Sphinx have found tunnels and chambers, but nothing that dramatically rewrites history. And yet, the feeling persists. Maybe it's because the Sphinx, more than almost any other ancient monument, embodies the idea of the keeper of secrets. It doesn't speak. It doesn't explain. It just stares out across the desert with eroded, weathered eyes. And in that silence, we project our own longings, our own sense that the past must hold secrets we haven't yet uncovered. And maybe it does, not in the literal sense of a hidden vault filled with scrolls, but in the broader sense that every ancient monument is a kind of secret, because we can never fully know what it meant to the people who built it. We can study the Sphinx, measure it, analyze its erosion patterns, debate its age, but we can't step into the mind of the person who first imagined it, who ordered its creation, who watched it take shape from the limestone. We can't know what they felt standing before it, what prayers they offered, what hopes they projected onto its massive form. The Sphinx keeps its secrets not because it's hiding them, but because time itself is a barrier. The past is always, to some extent, unknowable. We can reconstruct parts of it, we can make educated guesses, but the lived experience, the felt reality of being an ancient Egyptian looking at the Sphinx for the first time, that's gone. It exists now only as a ghost, a shadow, something we can imagine but never quite touch. And in a way, that's beautiful, because it means the Sphinx will always be mysterious. No matter how much we learn, no matter how many theories we develop, it will always retain that quality of otherness, of being from a time and place we can visit intellectually but never truly inhabit. And in that enduring mystery, there's a kind of permanence. The Sphinx has outlasted empires. It's watched the rise and fall of dynasties, the coming and going of conquerors, the slow creep of desert sand covering and uncovering its base over millennia. And through it all, it's remained silent, watchful, unknowable. Let that image rest in your mind as you drift further towards sleep. The Sphinx, the sand, the silence, a guardian with no message, a watcher with no explanation, a mystery that simply is, that asks nothing of you except to acknowledge that some things cannot be known. And that's okay. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to understand it. You can just let it be, a presence from the deep past, still here, still mysterious, still beautiful in its incompleteness. Around the world, archaeologists have found texts carved in stone or written on ancient materials that we simply cannot read. These are lost languages, writing systems that have survived, but whose meanings have been lost because there's no one left who speaks the language, no bilingual text to serve as a translation key, no living tradition to preserve the knowledge. The symbols are there, the texts exist, but they're silent. They hold messages we cannot access, stories we cannot hear, knowledge we cannot recover. One example is Linear A, a script used by the Minoan civilization on the island of Crete around 1800 to 1450 BCE. The Minoans were a sophisticated Bronze Age culture, known for their palaces, their art, their trade networks across the Mediterranean. They had a writing system, and we found many examples of it inscribed on clay tablets, seals, and other objects. But we don't know what it says. Linear A remains undeciphered. We can see the symbols. We can count them, categorize them, analyze their patterns, but we can't read them. We don't know what language they represent. We don't know what the tablets say. They could be inventories, religious texts, poetry, histories. We don't know. Another example is the Indus script, used by the Indus Valley civilization in what is now Pakistan and northwest India, around 2500 to 1900 BCE. This was one of the great early urban civilizations, contemporary with ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, with well-planned cities, advanced drainage systems, standardized weights and measures. And they had writing. Thousands of inscribed objects have been found: seals, pottery, tablets. The script has around 400 distinct signs, but again, we can't read it. We don't know what language it represents. We don't know if it's phonetic, logographic, or something else. It's a complete mystery. These lost languages are frustrating because the texts are right there. The information is encoded. We just don't have the key. It's like finding a locked box with something rattling inside, and no matter how hard you try, you can't figure out how to open it. And so the texts remain silent, tantalizingly close, but ultimately inaccessible. But there's also something poignant about this. These lost languages remind us that communication is fragile. Language requires a community. It requires speakers and listeners, writers and readers, a shared understanding of what the symbols mean. When that community disappears, when the last speaker dies, when the last person who can read the script is gone, the language becomes a fossil. It's still there, still visible, but it's no longer alive. It no longer communicates. It becomes a monument to something that once was and no longer is. And yet, even in their silence, these texts still speak in a way. They tell us that people lived here, that they had complex societies, that they kept records, that they cared about things enough to write them down. Even if we can't read the words, we know that the act of writing was important to them, that they believed their words mattered, that they were worth preserving in stone or clay. There's something moving about that. The idea that someone, over 3,000 years ago, sat down and carefully inscribed symbols onto a clay tablet, symbols that represented sounds or ideas or names, symbols that they believed would be read and understood. And those symbols were read for a time. They served their purpose. They communicated, but eventually the language faded. The readers disappeared. And now the symbols sit in museums, mute, waiting for someone to crack the code, to give them voice again. Maybe someday we will. Maybe advances in computational linguistics, in pattern recognition, in comparative analysis, will finally unlock linear A or the indescript. Maybe we'll find a bilingual text, a Rosetta Stone for these lost languages that provides the key. Or maybe we won't. Maybe these languages will remain lost forever, their messages permanently out of reach. And if that happens, if we never decode them, what have we lost? Not just the specific information the texts contain, but something deeper, a whole way of thinking, a whole world of stories and beliefs and knowledge that existed once and now exists only as silent symbols on stone. We've lost voices. We've lost perspectives. We've lost the chance to hear what the Minoans or the Indus people had to say about their lives, their world, their understanding of existence. But maybe, in a strange way, the silence itself has meaning. Maybe the fact that these texts remain undeciphered reminds us that we are not the culmination of history, that there were people before us who were just as complex, just as thoughtful, just as capable of creating meaning as we are, and their meanings have been lost, just as someday our meanings might be lost too. Languages die, civilizations fall, texts are forgotten, and in that forgetting, there's a kind of humility, a reminder that we are part of a much longer story, and that story has many chapters we'll never read. So as you lie here now, thinking about lost languages, about symbols no one can read, let it be a gentle reminder. Not everything needs to be understood. Not everything needs to be decoded. Some mysteries will remain mysteries. Some voices will remain silent. And that's part of the human story too. The gaps, the silences, the things we cannot recover. And in accepting that, in letting go of the need to know everything, there's a kind of peace, a softness, a space where sleep can enter, quiet and untroubled by the pressure to solve, to understand, to make sense of it all. The legend of Atlantis comes to us from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who mentioned it in two of his dialogues, Timaeus and Cryats, written around 360 BCE. According to Plato, Atlantis was a powerful and advanced civilization located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. It was a large island, or perhaps a continent, home to a mighty empire that controlled vast territories and possessed incredible wealth, and technological prowess. But the Atlanteans grew arrogant, corrupt, and aggressive. They launched an invasion against Athens, which at the time was portrayed as a virtuous and strong city. The Athenians repelled the invasion, but shortly afterward, Atlantis was destroyed in a single day and night of catastrophic earthquakes and floods, sinking beneath the ocean and disappearing forever. That's the story. And for over 2,000 years, people have been debating whether it's real. Was Atlantis an actual place? A historical civilization that was lost to some ancient cataclysm? Or was it a myth? A fictional creation Plato used to make a philosophical point about the dangers of hubris and the impermanence of power. The mainstream consensus among historians and archaeologists is that Atlantis was not real, at least not as a literal place. Plato's account has the characteristics of allegory. The details are too neat, too symbolic. Atlantis serves as a foil for Athens, a way of contrasting a corrupt, materialistic empire with a virtuous, disciplined city-state. The story of its destruction reads like a moral tale, a warning against pride and excess. And no physical evidence for Atlantis has ever been found. No ruins, no artifacts, no geological signs of a sunken continent where Plato described it. And yet, the legend persists. Why? Partly because it's a compelling story. The idea of a lost civilization, an advanced society that vanished beneath the waves, captures the imagination. It taps into something deep, a sense that there's more to history than we know, that there are gaps in the record, that maybe, just maybe, there are secrets buried in the ocean floor or hidden in places we haven't looked. But the legend of Atlantis also persists because it speaks to a broader human fascination with lost civilizations in general. Throughout history, cultures have told stories about golden ages, about times when things were better, when people were wiser, when knowledge was greater. These stories serve a function. They provide a sense of continuity with the past. They suggest that what we have now is not all there is, that there were other ways of being, other ways of knowing, other societies that achieve things we haven't. In that sense, Atlantis doesn't need to be real to be meaningful. It can function as a symbol, as a placeholder for all the civilizations that actually were lost, for the knowledge that actually was forgotten, for the achievements that actually did disappear. When cities burned, or empires collapsed, or languages died out, Atlantis becomes a way of acknowledging that history is not a smooth upward climb, but a series of rises and falls, of brilliance and collapse, of memory and forgetting. There's also something about the ocean that makes the story resonant. The ocean is vast, deep, mostly unexplored. We know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the deep sea. And so, the ocean becomes a repository for our imaginations, a place where lost things could still exist, hidden beneath miles of water, waiting to be discovered. Atlantis, in this sense, is less about a specific place and more about the idea that the unknown still holds possibilities, that there are mysteries we haven't solved, that the past might surprise us yet. And maybe that's comforting, not the literal belief in Atlantis, but the feeling that the world is larger and stranger than we often assume, that history is not fully mapped, that there are still blank spaces on the chart. Because blank spaces allow for wonder, they allow for stories, they allow us to imagine that there's more to discover, more to learn, more to understand. As you drift further into sleep, you can let the image of Atlantis rest in your mind, not as a place, but as a feeling. The feeling of something lost, something beautiful, something that once was and then wasn't. And in that loss, there's a kind of melancholy beauty, a reminder that nothing lasts forever. that even the mightiest civilizations eventually fade, that the ocean, patient and vast, reclaims what was built on its shores. And in that reclaiming, there's not just loss, but also transformation. What sinks beneath the waves doesn't simply disappear. It becomes part of the ocean, part of the deep, part of the mystery. And maybe that's where it belongs. In the ancient world, fire was more than a source of warmth or light. It was sacred. It was transformative. It was the element that separated humans from animals, the gift of the gods, the heart of the hearth, the center around which communities gathered. And at night, when darkness was complete and the world beyond the firelight was full of unseen dangers, fire became even more important. It created a space of safety, of visibility, of human presence in the midst of the wild. Many ancient cultures held fire rituals, ceremonies that took place at night, often around communal fires that burned at the center of villages or at sacred sites. These weren't just practical gatherings. They were spiritual events, moments when the boundary between the ordinary and the sacred grew thin. Fire was seen as a medium, a way of communicating with gods or ancestors or spirits. Offerings were burned. Prayers were spoken into the flames. Smoke rose toward the sky, carrying messages from the human world to the divine. Why fire? Partly because it's transformative. Fire changes things. It takes solid matter, wood, food, offerings, and turns it into smoke and ash and light. It's a visible process of transformation, of something material becoming immaterial, of the earthly becoming ethereal. And in that transformation, ancient people saw a metaphor for other kinds of change. The passage of the soul from body to spirit, the movement from one state of being to another, the connection between the visible world and the invisible forces that governed it. Fire also creates community. Sitting around a fire is an ancient human activity, one that predates written history, that goes back to the earliest days of our species. When you sit around a fire with others, you share warmth, light, and space. You can see each other's faces. You can talk, tell stories, sing. The fire becomes the center, the anchor, the place where the group coheres. And at night, when the fire is the only source of light, it becomes even more significant. Outside the circle of firelight is darkness, the unknown, the potential danger. Inside is safety, visibility, humanity. So fire rituals weren't just about the fire itself. They were about gathering, about coming together as a community, reaffirming bonds, sharing in a collective experience. The fire was the focus, but the true purpose was connection between people and the divine, between individuals and the group, between the present moment and the long chain of ancestors who had gathered around fires before. There's something deeply primal about this. Even now, even with all our modern technology, sitting around a fire at night feels different. It feels special. The flicker of flames, the warmth, the smell of smoke, the way the light dances and shifts, revealing and concealing faces, creating a space that feels separate from the rest of the world. You can feel it pulling you in, making you quiet, making you reflective. It's not just nostalgia, it's something older, something wired into the human experience. And in the ancient world, that feeling was amplified because the fire was all there was. No electric lights, no screens, no distractions. Just the fire, the darkness, and the people gathered around it. And in that simplicity, there was a kind of intensity. the rituals performed around those fires, the songs sung, the prayers offered, they weren't casual. They were serious, significant, tied to the survival and well-being of the community. The fire was a lifeline, a connection to the forces that governed the world, a way of ensuring that the crops would grow, the rains would come, the tribe would endure. Imagine being part of one of those rituals. It's night. You're standing with others in a circle around a large fire. The flames are high, crackling, sending sparks into the dark sky. The air is cool, but the fire is warm. You can feel its heat on your face, see its light reflected in the eyes of those around you. Someone is chanting, a low rhythmic sound that rises and falls. Others join in. The rhythm builds. You feel it in your chest, in your breath, in the way your body sways slightly with the sound. The fire burns, the smoke rises, and for a moment, you're not just standing in a field or a forest or a desert. You're standing at the center of the world, connected to something vast and ancient and powerful, something that doesn't have a name but can be felt, something that speaks through the fire and the darkness and the shared presence of the people around you. That's the power of fire rituals. They create a moment outside of ordinary time, a space where the usual rules don't apply, where the veil between the everyday and the sacred is thin enough to pass through. And in that space, ancient people found meaning, found connection, found a way to make sense of the vast, unknowable world they inhabited. As you lie here now, you can imagine that fire. You can see it flickering in your mind's eye, feel its warmth, hear the crackle of the wood, and you can let that image carry you deeper into rest, into the quiet darkness that surrounds you, into the knowledge that humans have always sought connection, have always looked for meaning, have always gathered in circles and found comfort in the presence of others, and the light of a shared flame. The fire burns, the night holds, and you too are held, safe and warm, drifting gently toward sleep. Did ancient people experience consciousness differently than we do? It's a strange question, one that's hard to answer because consciousness is so subjective, so interior. We can't step into the mind of someone who lived 3,000 years ago and experience what they experienced. We can only infer based on the texts they left behind, the art they created, the structures they built, the myths and rituals that shaped their lives. But there are hints that the answer might be yes, that the way ancient people understood and experienced their own minds was different from the way we do today. Not because their brains were different, biologically speaking, but because the cultural frameworks they used to interpret mental experience were different. Take dreams, for example. In many ancient cultures, dreams were not seen as random neural firings, not as the brain's way of processing memories or consolidating information. They were messages, communications from gods, ancestors, or spirits. A dream wasn't just something that happened to you, it was something being told to you. And so, dreams were taken seriously. They were interpreted, they were acted upon. Kings and generals made decisions based on dreams. Priests and shamans analyzed dreams to understand the will of the gods, to predict the future, to diagnose illness. This is radically different from the modern view, where dreams are generally seen as internal, as products of our own minds. We might find them interesting, might try to interpret them psychologically, but we don't usually treat them as external communications. Ancient people did, and that changes the experience. If you believe a dream is a message from a god, then the dream feels different. It carries weight. It demands attention. It's not just a curiosity. It's a revelation. Visions work the same way. Many ancient cultures had practices specifically designed to induce altered states of consciousness: fasting, rhythmic drumming, chanting, the use of psychoactive plants. These weren't recreational. They were spiritual technologies, methods for accessing knowledge or power that couldn't be reached in ordinary waking consciousness. Shamans, priests, oracles, they all used these techniques to enter trance states, to journey to other realms, to communicate with spirits, to bring back information or healing. And here's the interesting part. These experiences felt real. Not metaphorically real, but actually. When a shaman reported traveling to the underworld or the sky realm, they weren't speaking in symbols, at least not consciously. They believed they had actually been there, that they had seen things, spoken to beings, learned things that couldn't be learned any other way. Their culture supported this belief. Everyone around them shared the same framework, the same understanding that consciousness could extend beyond the ordinary, that there were other layers of reality accessible through the right practices. This is very different from the modern Western view, which tends to see consciousness as confined to the individual brain, as generated entirely by neural activity, as private and internal. In the ancient worldview, consciousness was more porous. It could reach out. It could be reached into. The boundary between self and other, between inner and outer, between human and divine, was not as fixed, not as rigid. You could be possessed by a god. You could be inhabited by a spirit. You could leave your body and travel. Consciousness was not a sealed container. It was an open system. And maybe that's why ancient people were so comfortable with mystery, with ambiguity, with the idea that not everything could be explained or understood, because their entire experience of consciousness was already mysterious. The mind was not just a problem-solving machine. It was a gateway, a threshold, a space where different realities could meet. And in that meeting, things happened that couldn't be reduced to logic or reason. Things that had to be felt, experienced, accepted on their own terms. We've lost some of that. In the modern world, we've gained a lot, certainly. We understand the brain in ways ancient people never could. We can treat mental illness, enhance cognition, map neural pathways. But we've also narrowed our sense of what consciousness is, what it can do, where its boundaries lie. We've made it smaller, more predictable, more contained. And in doing so, we've maybe lost some of the openness, some of the sense that the mind is a mystery, that it contains depths we haven't fully explored, that there are ways of experiencing reality that our current scientific frameworks don't capture. This isn't to say the ancient view was correct in a literal sense. We don't have to believe in gods or spirits or astral travel to recognize that there was something valuable in the way ancient people approached consciousness, with humility, with reverence, with an understanding that the mind is not just a tool for navigating the world, but also a space where the world reveals itself in ways that are subtle, unexpected, and not always easily explained. As you drift deeper now, you can let your mind be that kind of space, not trying to control it, not trying to direct every thought, but letting it wander, letting it be open, letting images and feelings and half-formed ideas flow through without needing to make sense of them. Ancient people understood something we sometimes forget, that not everything has to be understood to be real, that consciousness can be a mystery to itself, and that in that mystery there's not confusion, but a kind of peace, a softness, a letting go of the need to know and control and explain. The mind drifts, the boundaries soften, and sleep, ancient and patient, waits to carry you away. Ancient people knew the night sky in a way most of us no longer do. Without artificial light, the stars were vivid, countless, undimmed by the glow of cities. And so they watched, night after night, season after season, generation after generation. They noticed patterns. They saw that certain groups of stars appeared to move together, that they rose and set in predictable ways, that they shifted slowly across the year. And from these observations, they created constellations, patterns and stories mapped onto the sky. Constellations are cultural constructs. The stars themselves don't form pictures. They're scattered across vast distances, unrelated to each other except from our perspective. But ancient people connected them, drew lines between them, saw shapes, bears and hunters, and rivers and gods. Different cultures saw different patterns. The Greeks saw one set of constellations. The Chinese saw another. Indigenous peoples across the Americas, Australia, Africa, they all had their own ways of organizing the sky, their own stories about what the stars represented. But despite these differences, there's a commonality. Almost every culture that had a clear view of the night sky developed constellations and used them. Why? Because the stars were useful. They provided a way to navigate, to tell time, to mark seasons. Sailors used the stars to find their way across the ocean. Farmers used them to know when to plant. Travelers used them to orient themselves in unfamiliar territory. The sky was a map, a clock, a calendar, all rolled into one. But the stars were more than just practical tools. They were also a source of wonder, of mystery, of connection to something larger. Ancient people looked up at the sky and saw not just points of light, but a cosmos, an ordered whole, a vast structure within which they were a small but significant part. The stars were eternal, unchanging, or so it seemed. They had been there before anyone was born. They would be there after everyone died. And in that permanence, there was a kind of comfort, a sense that the universe had structure, that it was not random, that there were patterns that could be known and relied upon. Many ancient cultures also believed the stars had power, that they influenced events on Earth, that the positions of planets and constellations at the time of a person's birth could shape their destiny. Astrology, in various forms, was practiced across the world, not as entertainment or a curiosity, as it often is today, but as a serious discipline, a way of understanding the relationship between the heavens and the earth, between cosmic order and human life. We can be skeptical of astrology now, and most scientists are. There's no physical mechanism by which the positions of distant stars could influence an individual's personality or fate, but that skepticism shouldn't blind us to the fact that ancient people were not fools. They were observing the sky with great care and precision. They were tracking planetary movements, predicting eclipses, mapping the heavens with a level of accuracy that's impressive even by modern standards. The mathematics and astronomy required to create calendars, to predict celestial events, to navigate by the stars, this was sophisticated knowledge accumulated over generations, refined and passed down. And underlying all of this was a belief that the sky mattered, that it was meaningful, that the universe was not indifferent, but somehow connected to human concerns, to the rhythms of life, to the passage of time. This belief, whether or not we share it, shaped how ancient people experienced the world. When they looked up at the stars, they weren't just seeing distant suns. They were seeing ancestors, gods, symbols, stories. They were seeing a reflection of their own lives, their hopes, their fears. their understanding of how the world worked. There's something beautiful about that. The idea that the night sky is not just a physical phenomenon, but a cultural and spiritual one, a canvas onto which humans have projected meaning for thousands of years. Every constellation is a story. Every story is a way of making sense of the world, of finding patterns in chaos, of connecting the vastness of the cosmos to the smallness of individual human experience. And even now, even knowing what we know about the actual nature of stars, about the light years that separate them, about the physics of nuclear fusion and the life cycles of stellar objects, even with all that knowledge, there's still something awe-inspiring about looking up on a clear night and seeing the Milky Way stretched across the sky, seeing the same stars that ancient people saw, feeling the same sense of smallness and wonder and connection. The stars haven't changed. We've changed. But the experience of looking up, of feeling dwarfed by the scale of it all, of sensing that we're part of something much larger than ourselves, that experience is still there, still available, still ancient. Let that image settle in your mind. The night sky, the stars, the slow wheel of constellations turning overhead, ancient people watching from deserts and plains and mountaintops, marking the patterns, telling the stories, finding their way by the light of distant suns. And you, here, now lying in darkness, part of that same long lineage of people who have looked up and wondered. The stars shine, the night holds, and you too are held, connected across time to something vast and old and enduring. Ancient structures have a relationship with the night that modern buildings rarely possess. Many of the great monuments, the pyramids, the temples, the stone circles were built not just to exist in daylight, but to interact with darkness, with the movements of the sun and moon, with the stars. They were designed with celestial alignments, oriented towards solstices or equinoxes, positioned so that on certain nights, light would fall in a particular way, illuminating a specific chamber, or carving, or stone. This suggests that the ancient builders saw night not as an absence, but as a presence, as a time when certain things became possible, when the sacred revealed itself in ways it didn't during the day. Night was when rituals happened, when the veil between worlds was thinnest, when humans could approach the divine or the ancestors or the forces that govern the cosmos. Consider Newgrange, a Neolithic passage tomb in Ireland, built around 3,200 BCE, older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids. It's a massive mound of earth and stone with a narrow passage leading to a central chamber. And once a year, on the winter solstice, at dawn, the rising sun shines directly down that passage and illuminates the chamber for about 17 minutes. It's precise. It's deliberate. The builders engineered this alignment 5,000 years ago, and it still works every year. On the darkest day, the light returns. The chamber fills with golden light, and in that moment, there's a sense of renewal, of the sun being reborn, of life continuing. This wasn't accidental. It was the whole point. Newgrange was built to mark the solstice, to capture that moment when the sun begins its return, when the days start to lengthen again after the long darkness of winter. And the people who built it and the people who used it for centuries afterward, they would have gathered there on that morning, waiting in the cold and dark, watching for the first rays of sunlight to penetrate the tomb and bring light to the place of the dead. It was a ritual, a ceremony, a moment of profound significance. Many other ancient structures have similar alignments. Stonehenge marks the summer solstice. The pyramids align with stars. Temples in Egypt, Greece, and Mesoamerica were oriented towards specific celestial events. The ancient world was not haphazard in its architecture. Every major monument was placed deliberately, oriented carefully, designed to interact with the sky in ways that reinforced beliefs, marked time, and created moments of connection between the earthly and the celestial. And these moments often happened at night, or at the boundary between night and day, because those were the liminal times, the threshold times when transitions occurred. Night into day, day into night, the solstice, when the sun stands still before reversing its course. These were the moments when the structure of time itself felt fragile, when the order of things could shift, when humans needed to perform rituals to ensure that the cycle would continue, that the sun would return, that life would go on. So the ancient monuments were built not just to be seen, but to participate in these cosmic dramas. They were stages, actors, witnesses. They held space for rituals that connected human time to cosmic time, human concerns to the vast movements of the heavens. And in doing so, they became more than stone. They became memory. They became places where the boundary between the human and the divine grew thin enough to cross. And at night, when the stars came out, when the moon rose, when the darkness was complete, these places took on an even greater power. Because in darkness, they were silhouettes, massive shapes against the sky, markers that said, "Here, this place matters. This place is sacred. This place is where humans have stood for thousands of years and looked up and wondered and felt connected to something larger than themselves." Imagine standing at Stonehenge at night. The stones rise around you, massive and ancient. The moon is out, casting silver light, creating shadows. The wind moves across the plain, cool and steady. There are no lights, no sounds of traffic, no signs of the modern world. Just you and the stones and the sky. And in that moment, you're not just standing in a historical site. You're standing in a threshold, a place between, a place where time feels different, where the past is not gone but present, layered, woven into the stones and the earth and the air. You can feel it, the weight of centuries, the countless people who have stood where you're standing, who have looked up at the same stars, who have asked the same questions. What does it all mean? Why are we here? What comes after? You don't need answers. In places like this, the questions are enough. The questions are the point, and the stones, silent and enduring, hold space for those questions, for the wondering, for the sense that even in not knowing, there's something profound. Even in mystery, there's meaning. Let that feeling settle over you now. The stones, the night, the quiet knowledge that some places hold more than they reveal. That some structures are not just buildings but symbols. That the ancient world knew something about darkness that we've maybe forgotten. That the night is not empty, but full. That silence is not absence, but presence. That mystery is not a problem to solve, but a space to inhabit. A place where the mind can rest without needing to understand everything. Where sleep can come gently, like a tide washing over you and carrying you away. There's a particular feeling that comes from standing in an ancient ruin at night. It's hard to describe. It's not quite fear, though there's an edge of that, a sense of being in a place where the normal rules don't quite apply. It's not quite reverence, though there's that too. A respect for the age of the place, for the people who built it, for the fact that it's still here after so long. It's something else. a kind of presence, a sense that you're not alone. Not because there are ghosts or spirits, maybe there are, maybe there aren't, but because the place itself has a weight, a density, a quality that makes it feel inhabited, even when it's empty. Maybe it's the silence. Ruins are often quiet, especially at night. No voices, no footsteps, no ambient noise, just the sound of wind, if there's wind. Just the sound of your own breathing. And in that silence, your senses sharpen. You notice things you wouldn't notice during the day. The texture of stone, the way moonlight falls across broken walls, the smell of earth and old wood, and sometimes, faintly, of smoke, even though no fires have burned there in centuries. Or maybe it's the incompleteness. Ruins are not whole. They're fragments, pieces of what was once a complete structure, a building, or a temple, or a city. And those fragments invite the mind to fill in the gaps, to imagine what the place looked like when it was new, when people lived there, when it was full of sound and movement and life. But that imagining is always imperfect, always incomplete. And in that incompleteness, there's a kind of haunting, not supernatural, but psychological. The sense that something is missing, that the place is waiting for something, that the past is not fully past, but lingers, half present, half visible, like a fading echo. And then there's the time. Ruins are old. They've seen centuries, sometimes millennia. They've watched empires rise and fall. They've stood through wars, disasters, changes in climate, shifts in culture. And they're still here, even if they're crumbling, even if they're broken. And in that endurance, there's a kind of power. Because it means that something can last, that not everything disappears completely, that even when civilizations collapse and knowledge is lost and languages die, the stones remain, the structures remain, and they carry with them, even in their silence, even in their incompleteness, a kind of testimony. They say, "We were here, we built this, we mattered." Standing in such a place at night, you feel all of this at once. The silence, the incompleteness, the weight of time, and you feel too your own smallness, your own brevity. You're just one person, standing for a moment in a place that has stood for thousands of years. And after you leave, the place will continue to stand, or to slowly crumble, watched by no one, until eventually, maybe it disappears entirely. Or maybe it endures longer, outlasting even the memory of the civilization that built it, becoming just stone, just shape, just a place where the wind blows and the moon shines and nothing remains but the quiet presence of something that once was. And yet, in that awareness of your own transience, there's not despair, but a strange kind of peace. Because you're part of the story too. You're standing in the ruin. You're feeling its presence. You're connecting, however briefly, with the long line of people who have been here before you, who have felt what you're feeling, who have looked at these stones and wondered. And in that connection, even if it's fleeting, even if you'll leave soon and the place will be empty again, there's a kind of continuity, a sense that human presence, even when it's brief, even when it leaves no lasting mark, is still part of the pattern, still part of the ongoing conversation between people and places, between present and past, between the known and the unknown. So as you lie here now, in your own darkness, you can imagine yourself standing in an ancient ruin at night. Maybe it's a place you've been, maybe it's a place you've only seen in pictures, or maybe it's a place you've imagined, a combination of all the ruins you've ever heard about, all the ancient sites that have captured your imagination. It doesn't matter which. What matters is the feeling, the stillness, the quiet presence of stone, the sense of time stretching out behind you and ahead of you, vast and patient and indifferent, and you, small and alive and present, standing in the middle of it all, breathing, feeling, aware. And as you stand there, or rather, as you imagine standing there, you can feel the day falling away, the worries, the tasks, the noise, all of it fading, becoming distant, becoming less important, because in this place, in this imagined ruin at night, none of that matters. All that matters is the stone and the silence and the slow passage of time. And in that simplicity, in that stripping away of everything except presence, there's a kind of relief, a letting go, a softness. And sleep, patient and ancient, begins to gather around you like the night itself, quiet and vast and welcoming. We've drifted through many mysteries tonight, from the pyramids rising out of desert sand to the stone circles marking the movements of the sun, from the lost library to the unreadable texts, from the legends of sunken continents to the faces carved in stone on a remote island. Each mystery different, each one unique, but all of them sharing something in common. They don't offer answers. They offer questions. And more than that, they offer a space to rest in, not knowing. This is, perhaps, one of the most important things the ancient mysteries teach us, that not everything needs to be solved, that not everything needs to be understood, that there is value, even beauty, in letting things remain mysterious, in accepting that some questions don't have answers, or at least not answers we can reach. And that's okay. The modern world often pushes in the opposite direction. It values solutions, explanations, clear answers. It's uncomfortable with ambiguity, with uncertainty, with the unresolved. We're taught to seek closure, to tie up loose ends, to make sense of things. And there's nothing wrong with that impulse. It's driven enormous progress, enormous understanding. But it can also be exhausting, because not everything fits into neat categories. Not everything can be explained. Not everything resolves. The ancient mysteries remind us of this. They remind us that humans have always lived with mystery, have always been surrounded by things they couldn't fully explain, and that didn't stop them from living, from building, from creating meaning. They built monuments to their questions. They carved symbols into stone, not knowing if future generations would understand them. They looked up at the stars and saw patterns, even if they couldn't explain what stars were. They lived with not knowing, and they did more than survive. They flourished. They created art and architecture and stories that have lasted thousands of years. So maybe mystery is not a problem. Maybe it's a natural state. Maybe the human mind is not designed to understand everything, but to wonder, to ask, to explore, to create meaning even in the absence of complete knowledge. And maybe in accepting that, in letting go of the pressure to solve every puzzle, to answer every question, there's a kind of liberation, a softness, a space where the mind can relax, where it doesn't have to work so hard, where it can simply be. And that's what the ancient mysteries offer us, especially at night, especially as we drift towards sleep. They offer a space to wonder without urgency, to think about vast, old, unresolved questions without needing to answer them, to let the mind move through images of pyramids and stone circles, and lost languages, and sunken cities, not trying to solve anything, not trying to figure anything out, but simply drifting, letting the thoughts come and go like waves, like breath, like the slow passage of time itself. Because sleep is a mystery too, isn't it? Every night, you lie down, close your eyes, and surrender consciousness. You let go of control, you let go of awareness, and you drift into a state that you can't observe, can't measure from the inside, can't fully understand. You trust that you'll wake up in the morning, that the time will have passed, that you'll have rested. But while it's happening, while you're actually asleep, you're not there to witness it. It's a gap, a blank, a mystery. And yet, we do it every night. We surrender to sleep. We let the mystery happen. We don't fight it. We don't demand answers. We simply accept that this is part of being human, that we need to sleep, that sleep involves letting go, and that letting go is okay. It's safe, it's necessary, it's natural. The ancient mysteries are the same. They ask you to let go, to stop trying to control, to stop trying to solve, to stop insisting on answers. They ask you to rest in not knowing. And in that rest, there's peace, there's stillness, there's the quiet understanding that you don't have to carry the weight of understanding everything, that you can put it down, that you can let the mysteries be mysterious, that you can simply drift alongside them, soft and untroubled. And now, as this journey comes to a close, as the words slow and the images fade, you can let everything we've explored tonight settle gently into the background. The pyramids, the temples, the lost languages, the stone faces on the island, the lines in the desert, the fire burning in the darkness, the stars overhead, all of it can remain, soft and distant, like a dream you're beginning to forget, like a memory of something you never quite experienced. You don't need to hold on to any of it. You don't need to remember the details. All of it was just a way of guiding you here, to this moment, to this quiet darkness, to this soft letting go. The mysteries can stay in the past, where they belong, and you can stay here, in the present, in the gentle unraveling of thought, in the softening of the body, in the deep, slow rhythm of breath that carries you down, down into the soft embrace of sleep. Rest now. Let the ancient world recede. Let the questions fade. Let the mysteries remain unsolved. Because tonight, there's nothing you need to figure out, nothing you need to understand, nothing you need to do except this. Close your eyes. Let your mind drift. Let your body rest. And let sleep, ancient and patient as the stones, carry you gently into darkness. Good night.